I'm gonna paste the agenda to attendees, right?
Yes, please.
And now all attendees can hear me, correct? So welcome, reporters. We're going to take a few minutes to let everybody else come on. In the meantime, any supporters who want to, please start your video. You go to the upper right-hand corner of your screen and you can start your video. You can hold up your signs. Reporters, as we wait for everybody to join us, there is an agenda in your chat box. You can see that. And as people are joining us, I just want to tell you what's happening here. It takes courage to speak out against abusers and the systems that enable them. While we wait for other reporters, some of the former Buffalo Exchange employees want to show their support for those who will be speaking today. If there's any other supporters, please join us. If you want to turn on your video, especially if you want to show your sign, go to the upper right-hand corner of your video screen and start your video. These former employees are holding signs with the Instagram page where you can read just some of the stories about what Todd Colletti did to his employees and what Buffalo Exchange allowed and encouraged. The people you see here today, many of whom want to remain anonymous, each represent dozens of employees who were harassed, manipulated, and preyed upon by Patrick Todd Colletti. Please stay with us for a moment and we will begin soon. Kelly V, muted is okay. If you want to turn on your video, go to the upper right-hand corner and start your video. Makaya, I'm going to push the record button. Or do you want to record?
Hi, Katie. We are recording. If anybody needs access to the recording afterwards, please email Katie directly.
So my email is katie@progressive-promotions.com. My phone number is at the top, and you probably had my media advisory sent out to you. Okay. There you go. Thank you. All right. We're going to start. I want to thank our panelists. Our supporters today for showing your support. For reporters, each of these former employees here represent dozens of other former Buffalo Exchange employees who have been harassed and manipulated and assaulted by Patrick Todd Colletti. You'll hear more about what he has done by attorney Ben Lebsack and also by some of the plaintiffs who are speaking here today. So let's get started. Thank you, reporters and others. And thank you to the supporters here today. We know that providing this gesture of solidarity may have been difficult for you, and we appreciate the support you've provided today. Let's switch screens. Supporters, you will not be seen right now. We'll continue with the press conference. Again, you can go up to the agenda at the top here. You can turn back to speaker view. First, we'll hear from Attorney Ben Lebsack. I'm just turning back to the agenda so you can all see that. Number two, we're going to hear from Attorney Ben Lebsack of Lowry, Parody, and Lebsack. And then Ben will turn it over to Elisa. Okay, and we are now on panelist view. I'm still seeing supporters. So switch your view to speakers, if you would, reporters. Okay, I'm still seeing the sign that says promotions. Ben, would you start to speak, please? And would you introduce yourself, and let's see if the screen.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ben Lebsack. I'm a lawyer with the law firm of Lowry Parody Lebsack. This morning, we filed a class action lawsuit against Buffalo Exchange, Todd Colletti, and related corporate entities. Buffalo Exchange stood in solidarity with Mr. Colletti for over 20 years, encouraging and fostering an environment where Mr. Colletti could sexually assault and harass his employees without consequence. You'll hear from 3 of our clients and Megan Parker, whose claims are outside of the statute of limitations, about their experiences working at Buffalo Exchange, the sexual assaults they were subject to, the daily harassment they endured, and the lack of any action by Buffalo Exchange to do anything to stop Mr. Colletti. After they share their stories, I will explain more about why we are suing Buffalo Exchange, and then I will be happy to answer questions. But first, we're going to hear from Megan Parker, Amanda Pruse, Clara Bruce, and Alyssa Detert. Alyssa?
Hi, my name is Alyssa Dieter. I worked for the Buffalo Exchange in Boulder on and off during my college years and the Broadway store in Denver from 2012 to its closing in July 2020. I was assaulted, harassed, and belittled by Patrick Todd Colletti. Without giving an account of my entire time with the company, there was abuse and manipulation over many years. The first time he assaulted me was in 2015 in the basement bar. I came to in the middle of the assault, and he told me to relax. It wasn't the last time he assaulted me. To Todd, I hope you're sober. That was the last conversation we had. I said you needed help. I hope you're feeling the overwhelming flood of emotions that hit you when you sober up. I hope you're feeling the immense pain survivors have poured into their accounts of what you did to them. Your legacy is that of a predator. You preyed on me too many times at too many vulnerable moments, and I was naive enough to think it would stop. I thought if I stopped drinking, you couldn't hurt me anymore. I can see now that your abuse and manipulation continued, just in a different form. But despite you, I'm here today. I'm strong, I'm still sober, and I am not alone. And to the Blocks and Buffalo Exchange Corporate, you failed us. I refuse to accept that you were shocked by the allegations against Todd. I do not believe that you have ever stood in solidarity with those who suffered at his hands. Now that people are watching, you might say that, but you have been ignoring cries for help for years. You've turned a blind eye. You've told them to stop calling. You've just ignored it until it quieted down. And now with an open letter and a couple of regurgitated statements on social media, you think it will just go away. You fail to see the gravity of your inaction, or you see it and you're too cowardly to correct your course. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Alyssa. And next, we're going to hear from Amanda.
My name is Amanda Pruse. I worked at Buffalo Exchange on and off from 2010 to 2016. During that time, mostly when I worked in the Broadway store, Todd pinched me, poked me, ridiculed me, shamed me, and gaslit me. He called me fat when I had gained some weight, ugly when I wasn't wearing makeup, and stupid when I made a mistake. He saved the compliments for when I was drunk. He assaulted me twice, and when I avoided him afterwards, he labeled me prude. That's when I realized how often he assaulted other people too. I realized that this was the norm. There were naked pictures of ex-employees hung all over the basement. Beautiful, well-dressed girls I didn't know. Girls with half-closed eyes and shirts pulled up awkwardly as if they weren't the ones tugging on their shirts. Todd twisted things so that it seemed like the quickest way into the inner circle was by getting assaulted. This was the norm. We all made jokes about it. His habits, his penchant for drugs and younger women, how he was artistic in his ability to pounce right when girls were most vulnerable after a breakup or a family death. This was the norm. All of this was the norm. Imagine how hard it was to accept daily belittlement, harassment, and assault as the norm. Todd was the perpetrator, but he is far from the only guilty party. The Blocks are close friends of Todd and have been for decades. He was the only person allowed a Buffalo Exchange franchise. They saw the basement, the way he acted at corporate meetings. They were well aware of the dozens of complaints that went to them about Todd from ex-employees. They know exactly what they said back to those ex-employees, how they claimed that there was nothing they could do, despite having their name on the building within which girls were getting abused on a weekly basis. The other owners were also well aware of what was happening right under their noses. They noticed the missing money used for cocaine and alcohol. They saw the exit interviews, knew why they weren't allowed into the Good Business Colorado. The only time this was brought up between business owners, it was because they were concerned about legal or money issues, not the dozens of people that were being verbally and physically assaulted under their roof. I am both comforted and devastated to know I am in great company. I have met some of the most inspiring, creative, beautiful, and powerful people through Buffalo Exchange. To everyone that has been impacted by that man, it was not your fault. I am sorry this happened to you and that it took so long. We all deserve better.
Thank you, Amanda. Now we'll hear from Clara.
Hi, my name is Clara Bruce, and I worked at Buffalo Exchange from March 2016 to August 2016. For the past 5 years, I have fought this battle, telling anyone I know and businesses I worked for to stay away from Buffalo Exchange. Patrick Todd Colletti masked Buffalo Exchange as a place of inclusivity and friends, but it was just that, a mask. Underneath, you found people, often young, often women, and often people of the LGBTQ community, being groomed by a man enabled by a system of silence. Today is the day that I publicly condemn those in power that had the ability to stop the drug consumption, harassment, and assault that took place over many decades at the Buffalo Exchange, Colorado. Over the 7 months I worked there, I saw the harassment of many employees, including myself, nudity, drug consumption, and public embarrassment of employees. This all accumulated to the assault of my sister. Todd normalized this within Buffalo Exchange, grooming us the very first day we began. On my first day, he referred to having a threesome with my sister and I, being laughed off and dismissed with Todd being Todd. Employees had a saying, "Nothing good happens in the basement after midnight," referring to being assaulted by Todd. This is no one's fault except for Todd and the people in power that enabled him. Our safety was our burden, as much as a woman's safety is. It's always our problem. Despite trying to stay safe, this did not stop him from poking at my sides, dumping water on me while wearing a white t-shirt, and slapping my ass while on the floor. After the assault of my sister occurred, I broke and I moved back home and started the job that I had worked 6 years prior, our family hair salon, where the only man I worked for was my father. About a year later, I moved back to Denver and got a job at a prominent restaurant chain that happened to share the same street as Buffalo Exchange. Within the first week, Patrick Todd Colletti strolled up the stairs asking for a partnership for the gay pride flag on the crosswalk of Broadway, a literal mask in front of the Broadway Buffalo Exchange store that played into the narrative of a safe, inclusive space. My company declined after I disclosed my experience. Not soon after that, they tried to join Good Business Colorado. I successfully blocked them, and again, I was believed and supported. I'm telling you all this because when stories come out like this, people like to focus on the past assault or harassment and often forget that survivors also have to watch their abuser go unabated in the community. Buffalo Exchange and Todd are not the first to enable and benefit from a system of silence and normalization, and they certainly won't be the last, but it's a step. To anyone harmed by Patrick Todd Colletti and Buffalo Exchange, I hope you're able to find some sort of resolution in this, or at the very least, you can cross them off of your people and places to warn others about. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. This is obviously tough to talk about. Next, we'll hear from Megan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Parker, and I'm a former employee of Buffalo Exchange, Colorado, and I am one of Todd's victims. I'm here today to support the people who are involved in the lawsuit and to add my voice to their fight because my story echoes their stories. My assault is past the statute of limitations in the state of Colorado, which is 6 years. So I am one of the many people who will be hoping to glean some semblance of justice from this legal action. I worked for the Buffalo Exchange, Colorado for 5 years, from 2008 to 2013. I was 24 years old when I got hired, newly married, and had moved to Colorado with the intention of going to art school. Getting a job at the Buffalo Exchange was a literal dream. In California, where I'm from, I had been shopping at the Buffalo Exchange for years and had even applied to work at one of the locations but didn't get hired. So when I got the job in Colorado, I was ecstatic. My first impression of Todd was that he was cocky, pretentious, intimidating. He definitely carried himself in a way that commanded attention and that let you know what the power dynamic was. From the very beginning, you started seeing things and hearing things that were desensitizing you to the abuse. Most of the people that the company hired were young and fairly new to the workforce and didn't have a realistic idea of what a professional work environment was. So when Todd comes in stomping and yelling and criticizing people or makes sexually explicit comments and no one speaks up against it, you think that's just how it is here. And you learn to follow suit because you don't want to be on the receiving end of an unhinged tirade. You laughed at his inappropriate jokes. You indulged his offensive behavior because that was the environment that the company fostered. And when he'd leave, you would just look at each other and roll your eyes and say, well, that's Todd being Todd, and carry on with your day. And anyone who ever did push back was gaslit, stonewalled, or probably wouldn't have their job for very long. Once Todd decided that you were controllable enough, he would find a way of endearing himself to you. He was an experienced manipulator and he could find whatever the unmet need was that you had, and he would fill that void. Were you an artist? Have a solo show in the gallery? Did you want to party, hang out with him and drink his booze and do his drugs? Did you need to buy something expensive? Have an interest-free loan from the store. Whatever it was that you needed, he would give it to you, and it was free. Except it wasn't free. And by the time you realized you were paying for it, it was too late. At the time, I was missing a fatherly or brotherly presence in my life, and he became a mentor to me. I was in art school, and he had friends who were famous artists. I was very into vintage clothing, and he had a world-class vintage collection. I was at a very vulnerable time in my life, and he became someone who I confided in. And we had developed what I had believed was a genuine friendship built on mutual respect. But I was wrong. At the end of 2012, my husband and I separated, and I was struggling a lot emotionally. And under the guise of a friendly evening, Todd plied me with alcohol, drove me to his home, and sexually assaulted me. I rarely spoke of this event in the years following, and have only recently been able to call it what it actually was, which is sexual assault. The guilt and the shame and the embarrassment were stifling, and even now I feel the impression that the trauma has made in my life. I hope for justice and healing for everyone who carries the weight of Todd's abuse, and I want to express my gratitude to everyone who believed us and supported us through all of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan. Let me just point out that Megan is not a plaintiff on the lawsuit because the statute of limitations ran out on her experience. Megan, thank you. Next, we'll hear Ben, who will tell us a little bit more about the lawsuit, and then he'll take some questions. I believe you can write down your questions in the lower right-hand corner of the screen under the Q&A, and then the hosts and panelists can see the questions. Thank you. Ben?
Todd Colletti groomed, harassed, and sexually assaulted dozens of young women, mostly employees, over the last 2 decades. Buffalo Exchange's owners, both in Colorado and in Arizona where it's headquartered, received complaints from employees and former employees about Mr. Colletti's behavior. We know employees complained to Buffalo Exchange's corporate office about Mr. Colletti in 2012, 2013, 2016, 2018, and 2020. And we suspect employees complain more often than that. Buffalo Exchange's owners chose to do nothing in response to the complaints. The only actions Buffalo Exchange took when it received these complaints was to tell the person calling that Buffalo Exchange could not help and to inform Mr. Colletti that one of his employees complained about him. Buffalo Exchange chose to do nothing in 2012 and 2013 when several employees reported to Buffalo Exchange that Todd Colletti sexually assaulted an employee, Megan Parker. Instead, Buffalo Exchange allowed and encouraged Mr. Colletti to turn the basement of his store into a bar, create a dark room where he made women strip so he could photograph them, and foster an environment where he sexually harassed nearly every employee of the store. Employees knew that if they complained about Mr. Colletti, Buffalo Exchange would do nothing except tell Mr. Colletti who had complained about him. Rather than help its employees, Buffalo Exchange aided and abetted Mr. Colletti in the harassment and assaults of his employees. Because of the bravery of the many women who came forward and shared their stories on Instagram about Mr. Colletti in the summer of 2020, Buffalo Exchange could not cover for Mr. Colletti any longer. Buffalo Exchange acted in response to the bad publicity it received because of the Instagram posts and ended its relationship with Mr. Colletti. Buffalo Exchange showed that it had the power to stop his behavior. When Mr. Colletti's behavior was made public on Instagram last year, Buffalo Exchange issued a statement on July 30 saying it believed the victims and stood in solidarity with them. At the same time Buffalo Exchange was writing this statement, Kirsten Block, the founder and owner of Buffalo Exchange, wrote an email to Mr. Colletti on July 26. I'm quoting directly from that email. Todd, I saw this stuff on Instagram on you, and I must say that some people are truly evil and vengeful. I am sorry that you were accused personally. So far, we are accused more for our business decisions, but I am getting personal attacks as well. I'm waiting to see what else they can come up with. In sympathy, Kirsten. Buffalo Exchange does not stand in solidarity with the victims and survivors of Mr. Colletti. Buffalo Exchange does not stand in solidarity with my clients. Buffalo Exchange stood in solidarity with Mr. Colletti for over 20 years, encouraging and fostering an environment where Mr. Colletti could sexually assault his employees without consequence. When a former employee called Buffalo Exchange's office in 2013 to report that Mr. Colletti sexually assaulted her coworker, the person who answered the phone said there was nothing Buffalo Exchange could do. By 2016, Buffalo Exchange had received so many complaints about Mr. Colletti's behavior that it revised the franchise agreement with him to try to cover itself from liability for his behavior, requiring the Colorado store to post a notice saying Buffalo Exchange is not your employer. Buffalo Exchange knew that Mr. Colletti's behavior was a problem, but rather than address his behavior, it affirmed to the Colorado employees that Buffalo Exchange was not going to help, so stop asking for help. When a former employee wrote Buffalo Exchange through its Instagram account in August 2018 to complain about Mr. Colletti's behavior and the illegal working conditions at the Colorado store, Buffalo Exchange sent the complaint to Mr. Colletti to handle himself. I'm quoting from a Buffalo Exchange submission to the Colorado Civil Rights Division. In 2018, Buffalo Exchange received notice of a complaint made by a previous employee of Forgotten Works regarding Todd Colletti. In accordance with its procedures, Buffalo Exchange forwarded the complaint to Forgotten Works for resolution. And then there's another quote from a submission to the Civil Rights Division. Todd expressed that everything had been done from an HR and legal perspective, and that this was due to a small local disgruntled group of ex-employees. Buffalo Exchange, its corporate owners, Kirsten Block, Rebecca Block, and the Colorado owners, Justin Van Houten, Victor Cortez, and Kathy Plage, had an obligation to the employees of Buffalo Exchange to protect them from Mr. Colletti. They did not protect the employees. Instead, they gave Mr. Colletti the position, space, and tools he needed to maintain a hostile work environment. This is more than failing to act. Buffalo Exchange actively aided Mr. Colletti in his behavior. Buffalo Exchange approved the creation of a bar in the basement. Buffalo Exchange approved of the basement parties. And by ignoring employee complaints and passing those complaints to Mr. Colletti, Buffalo Exchange created an environment of fear, which aided Mr. Colletti in maintaining a hostile work environment. Buffalo Exchange could have stood in solidarity with its employees, but did not. Instead, its actions contributed to the harms my clients and dozens of other employees suffered. I'm proud of the bravery of my clients, Ms. Parker, and the many individuals who have shared their stories in the Instagram account for coming forward and holding Buffalo Exchange accountable. We are here to hold Buffalo Exchange accountable. We are here for justice for my clients and every person harmed by Mr. Colletti and Buffalo Exchange. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I'm happy to facilitate any questions. You can see in the chat that if you have any questions, you can put that in the Q&A. If you have a long question, and I know you, or I can tell that you're with the media, I have a list of attendees, so you could just put your name or your media in the Q&A, and I can call on you. If you want a recording of the Zoom, contact me after at my phone number or my email, and I can send you a link. Any questions? I see one. I'll call on you in a second if I can do that. I think I can do that and ask you for a verbal. I can ask you to, I can repeat that or I'll see if I can let you speak. And then afterwards, after we're done, I'll send out the press release. Contact me if you don't get that within 15 minutes after this Zoom ends. I'll also send a link, if you don't already have it, to the lawsuit, to the complaint itself. Sometimes I know those go into spam. So I think, Jensen, I'm going to click on you and you can answer your, let me see if I.
It looks like the question's about the details of what was filed today.
So I was going to ask her if she wanted to say it.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, is this Jensen?
Yeah, it is. Hi, so Jensen Wortley, Denver Business Journal. Yeah, my question is just, could we get a little bit more detail on what exactly has been filed today?
Yes, a complaint and jury demand was filed in Denver District Court. And if you don't have a copy of the complaint that has the complete details, we can be sure to get you a copy of the complaint.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, well, we thank you all for coming today. Again, contact me if you want more information.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just have a quick question. So I'm curious. I saw
Who am I speaking with? Who am I speaking with?
Sorry, this is Nicole Fiero with Fox 31.
Okay.
Thank you so much for everyone who's brave enough to share their experience. We really appreciate that. My question is just, I saw something about the Denver District Attorney's Office saying that they refused to file charges because they didn't believe they could prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury. Talk to me about that. I mean, I guess your feelings about that and how that might impact this case.
I don't believe it impacts this case at all. There are different standards of proof and different processes between the criminal and the civil procedures. It's disappointing news that there were not criminal charges brought against him, but without knowing, the thought process, who they interviewed, what evidence they had, and their decision-making process, it's tough to opine about that decision-making. So we're disappointed, and that's the extent of our feelings about that.
Okay, I'd like to ask Kyle, I'd like to allow Kyle to ask his question.
Hi, this is Kyle with Westward. First of all, thanks for sharing your stories today and coming forward. That's incredibly brave. My question is, did any of the plaintiffs, did any of you specifically seek criminal action? And if so, would you be willing to share your experiences with that?
Because I represent my clients in the civil matter, and I was not involved in the criminal matter, I'm not going to answer that question. We're focused on the civil process and holding Buffalo Exchange accountable through the civil justice system.
Thanks.
Nicole, did you have a follow-up?
The only thing I would ask is if you could explain, just so our viewers understand how the civil process works, what comes next after this. You filed today, kind of explain what that means and what happens next.
Yeah, so we filed the lawsuit, and once it's served on the defendants, which will happen relatively quickly, they will have an answer deadline, a response deadline rather, and they can choose to answer the complaint, which means admitting or denying the allegations made in the complaint, or they may file a motion asking the judge to dismiss the complaint. We're not sure what they're going to do. Assumedly, after an answer, after a motion to dismiss is denied, then we'll move into the discovery phase of the lawsuit, where both sides exchange information, are able to ask each other questions, information, documents, and depositions occur. And then because of a Colorado Supreme Court directive encouraging and mandating that trials be set within a year of the at issue date, we expect to have a trial scheduled next spring or summer.
Any others? I'm not sure I'm seeing everybody's or hearing everybody's. Lucy, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. This is Lucy Haggard from the Colorado Sun. I noticed that this is a class action lawsuit. Do you expect to add more people to it in the coming near future here?
As far as named plaintiffs, I'm not sure about that. The way the class action works is we ask the judge to certify that this is a class, and then automatically the people who fit that class. So for instance, the class could be former employees of Buffalo Exchange who worked there during a period of time. Once the judge says this is a class, then those people are automatically not necessarily represented by us, but part of the lawsuit. They can get relief through that once the class is certified. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I suppose so. So you're not necessarily anticipating more named plaintiffs per se, though?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? Okay, I'm going to wait a sec. Emily, what media are you with?
I'm not with any media. I'm a former employee, and I understand that I am outside the statute of limitations, but I am curious to know if I can still be involved in a class action lawsuit.
I can't really give legal advice, and that's a legal question on here. Katie?
No, go ahead.
If you wanted to contact us outside of this press conference, I would encourage you to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other reporters who have a question? Okay, again, my name is Katie. I'm at 303-653-1009. If you don't get a press release from me with a link to the complaint within 15 minutes, let me know and I will help you out. I think that's it. I appreciate both the speakers, the supporters, and the reporters, and the attorneys as well. Thank you all, and have a good day. Bye-bye.